Good morning. I'm Kevin Strauss. I'm the medical director at the clinic. This is my 16th year at the clinic. And so when I come to this day, it feels a little bit like a family reunion. I get to look out at all these familiar faces and know that I've shared in some of your joys and some of your sorrows. And that is a real privilege. I'm also very honored to work with people like Dr. Williams and Dr. Carson. These are people who have children and families of their own, and they give of themselves tirelessly to serve your community. There are many people who serve at the clinic that often remain unnamed. We as physicians get to be the face of the clinic, but those of you who come there frequently know Christine Hendrickson, Donna Robinson, Millie Young, Carla Brigatti, Ashlyn Rodriguez, Eric Puffenberger, Kim Calderwood, Yolanda Kosek, Katora Byler, Lavina King, and our executive director, Adam Heath. Every one of those people is an integral part of what we do and has the same dedication to your children that the physicians do. For those of you who have not been to one of these auctions before and want to learn a little bit about what this day is for, I think the best way to tell you is to tell you the story of just one child. Because while we have learned how to diagnose and treat 225 different genetic disorders in children, and now care for about 1,200 children with special needs, we view our work one child at a time. And many of these children are here among you today. They are the inspiration for this day. At this auction block a few years ago, my friend and colleague, Dr. Eric Puffenberger, our clinic laboratory director, held up in his hand a small vial holding DNA, the chemical instructions used to make the human body. We can now read that DNA code with unprecedented accuracy. And sometimes, as Dr. Puffenberger reminded us on that day, the message is one of hope. Sometimes it opens a critical window that can allow us to protect a child from a lifetime of misery. But sometimes that message carries sorrow. In May of 2005, 12 years ago, Dr. Puffenberger read out a DNA letter code confirming that a newborn boy named Louis Martin, who gave me permission to tell you his story today, was stricken with an incurable disease. Louis was healthy at the time the test was done. But the DNA code told us with brutal certainty that Louis would suffer a relentless degeneration of the nerves in his spinal cord, that without a miraculous treatment, he would die helpless at far too young an age. Lewis's parents, Harvey and Lorraine, were prepared to sacrifice everything to keep their son healthy. Over the years, as new treatments came and went, they tried them all. But nothing really worked. Disappointment came repeatedly in the wake of each new opportunity, and over time, as they would tell me later, they lost hope. But then finally, in December of last year, just a few months ago, the FDA approved the first drug effective for this previously lethal disease. A drug called Spinraza. News of this new drug spread quickly through the SMA community worldwide, and the Martins once again felt hope rising within them. But the first barrier to treatment was the out-of-pocket costs for the drug, which was $125,000 a dose. $625,000 per year. Unshaken, Harvey and Lorraine contacted the drug company directly and were able to procure the drug through a charitable program that allowed them to have access for free for life. But then they faced a second obstacle. Spinraza must be delivered directly into the fluid that surrounds the spinal cord. And like so many children with neuromuscular disease, Lewis had metal rods in his back to protect him from a spine deformity. Multiple doctors in Ohio, after carefully considering his case, told the family, tragically, that it was impossible to give him the drug. Lewis and his family were crushed. Just as they had felt their hope taking flight, it once again came crashing to the ground. An experience that so many of you parents of special children have had over and over and over again. As the week came to a close, the parents were prepared to give up hope for Spinraza. But I found out that they had decided to wait just a little bit longer and pray about it for one more weekend in the hopes that there might be an answer. That same week, I learned about a drug assistance program that would allow most, if not all, of our self-pay families to get Spinraza for free. I quickly made plans to communicate this to our SMA community, and Harvey and Lorraine, who were very close to my heart, were the very first people that I called. When they told me about their heartbreaking story and told me about the metal rods in Lewis's back that would prevent him from getting this potentially life-saving drug, I was determined that we could help them find an answer. And if we did not, who would? The next call that I made was to a man who's become a good friend and a treasured colleague, a man named Freeman Miller. Now, Freeman is here with his wife Lois today. I don't see where you're standing, but Lois, I want to let you know that your husband is a hero. He's a very humble man, but he's a hero. You would not know, meeting him, he's one of the most humble men I've ever met. But he's a world-renowned expert on the orthopedic treatment of children with neuromuscular diseases. When I told him about Lewis, he devised an innovative way to safely pass through the surgical hardware in Lewis's back so that he could get the drug. The Martins traveled from Ohio to Delaware to meet with Dr. Miller and learn about this new innovative procedure. I had the privilege of being at that meeting, and when I saw Lewis at the age of 12, I realized that he was at a very advanced stage of his disease. He was helpless in his wheelchair, unable to control his head. In fact, the only control he had over his body was the ability to move one finger of one hand. And he could speak, but only in a whisper. Lewis knew that day that because of his condition, he probably did not stand to benefit much from the drug. But he also knew what was at stake. Because when Dr. Miller asked him directly if he wanted to receive this treatment, he gave this remarkable reply. In his quiet voice, he said, "It may not help me much. I know that. But someday, when I have a child with SMA, they're going to be able to get this drug right away." Now that is hope. At 8:30 a.m. on June 2nd, 2017, Lewis Martin was the first child in the world to receive Spinraza through a permanent indwelling spinal catheter designed by Dr. Miller. This novel approach, if effective, will literally double the number of children worldwide who can receive this drug. Thousands of children worldwide. Like Dr. Puffenberger before me, I brought a vial with me today. But this vial doesn't contain DNA. This is the first vial of Spinraza that was given to Lewis on June 2nd. This vial held a teaspoon of liquid worth $125,000. But it also held something else. It held hope. And that is priceless. Lewis and his family remind us that hope cannot shield us from suffering in this life. Rather, hope is what allows us to endure suffering without losing our sense of joy. Hope is an expression of the kind of strength and courage that can only come from deep and abiding love. Because being deeply loved by someone gives us strength, while loving someone deeply gives us courage. Lewis is one of my heroes. He gives me courage and he gives me hope, like so many of the children and families that I had the privilege to serve. Thank you for your tireless efforts on behalf of Lewis, the children that are here today, and our grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Thank you to the auction committee who make this event possible year after year. Thank you again to my clinic staff and to the countless people here who give of their time, their labor, their prayers to make this day possible. Without it, Lewis's story would not be possible. Because of our work together, it's a story that we can all share. I am very grateful to be part of this family. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Strauss. Before we commence the auction, we are going to sell about 4 specialty, 5 specialty items here before block 2 and 3 get started.